This is SciByte, episode 90 for April 16th, 2013. Hi everyone, and welcome to SciByte, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly science podcast, live every Tuesday over at jblive.tv at 7 p.m. Pacific, 7:30 p.m. Pacific, jblive.tv, and fresh Wednesday mornings over at jblive.tv. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our host, Heather. Hey there, Heather.
Hey there, Chris.
Hey, Heather, what are we talking about today?
Today, we're going to take a look at some more Alzheimer's breakthroughs, nuclear fusion to Mars, finding an old Soviet Mars probe, a comet aiming for Mars, glasses that read to you, viewer feedback, curiosity news, and as always, take a peek back into history and up in the side this week.
Holy smokes, Heather. That sounds like more science that can fit in one show. Why don't we kick it off with the news? All right, Heather, what is our first news in SciByte tonight?
Alrighty, there are new findings that actually show that the brain damage in Alzheimer's disease is linked to an overactivation of a new enzyme that they are looking at called AMPK. So we've been looking at, and they're actually looking to see where it came from, is that it's could be causing activation from a type 2 diabetes drug, metformin.
Whoa,
which
no
is actually,
kidding.
Yeah, we're just kind of the sideways glance as to how this kind of led to it. Now, we've talked about Alzheimer's disease off and on as the show's progressed.
Yeah, it's been something we followed for a while.
Yeah, and we've seen that it's these amyloid beta proteins sort of clump up on the various synapses, and they start killing off specific brain synapses in the brain, start slowing things down. Now, what this new lab was actually not looking at Alzheimer's disease. It was looking at, just the normal growth and develop of neurons in general.
Oh, really?
And so they're up to see in 2011, they reported that, hey, this drug is causing this specific enzyme, AMPK, to, overactivate. So that's activating much more than it should. And among all those, in the animal models that they were using, they actually saw some impaired ability for neurons to grow what they call stalks or axons, which is sort of what where the communication lines are. That's how they communicate to each other.
Like the connection points.
Yeah. So, and at the same time, a different group was actually looking at clues at how that same enzyme might have a role in Alzheimer's disease. So they were looking at a strain of mice specifically that are engineered to overproduce the amyloid beta, which we've known has something to do with Alzheimer's disease.
Okay.
And when they blocked the AMPK enzymes that you've been talking about, they actually prevented that spine loss so that the communication was maintained. So now they're trying to look at, okay, well, we know the amyloid betas have something to do with it, but they're in your brain sort of in some sort of naturally. It's just at a certain point, there's plaques of them and they build up too much and something turns them toxic. Which, to those spines.
So a certain amount of them is okay, but a certain amount is toxic.
Yeah, well, for some reason, they can hit an overproduction. And then with that overproduction, they also get sort of turn toxic. So it's a combination of these two things. And there's a whole bunch of them, and they're kind of toxic, and they're killing off these signals, that transmit things to neuron. Now that in itself, the toxicity, switch, they've actually seen the presence of what they call tau proteins. But they just kind of have known that there is a function. They just don't know the exact interaction between the two. So now they're trying to look into that. So they're looking at these tangles of these proteins called tau. They start to have multiple alterations in their function and activity, and they start to glom up on the neurons in the affected areas of the brain where Alzheimer's is occurring in the brain. So now those amyloid beta oligomers, they can't cause the spine loss itself. So they're just kind of glomming on there. They're not killing off the communication spines unless that enzyme, the AMPK that we were talking about earlier, is overactivating. So it's actually a combination of these two things. So it's kind of so they're trying to look into the domino effect of all these, what's coming up first and what's causing which, triggers to happen.
Boy, as somebody whose family has been impacted by Alzheimer's, that makes me feel like we're kind of at square zero.
Well, I mean,
when you say, we're looking at some of that stuff, that sounds like we're still very early, very, very early in the stages of figuring Alzheimer's out. And
yes.
I lost my grandma to Alzheimer's.
And I did as well.
And it's something that I have a lot of personal experience with.
Yeah.
And it feels, I don't know if discouraging is the right word, but I guess it feels like a bit of a setback to think that we're maybe this early in the stage of it.
I don't really look at it that way. Think of it like a really long marathon.
Okay.
Like, you don't know where the marathon has been going. You just know that it ends up in front of your door. And so slowly but surely, you can kind of start backtracking it. Okay, so now you can sort of stop it a block or two away. Now, you don't know the path where, you don't know anything about how long the marathon is or where it was before those 2 blocks, but you start inching your way back. And okay, you'll say sometimes now you know some of the starting track, and now suddenly you know that halfway across town, there's a pit stop for the race.
Right.
You don't know the connections.
But we check heartbeat there. We check blood pressure there.
Yeah, so you can, any of these points, you can say, hey, this is what's happening. How do we stop what's going on here? Now,
wow.
Some of it is, you have a broken bone. You're getting pain relievers. That's okay. You're treating the symptoms and you're calming that down. Now, you still have to go back and figure, okay, here's how to fix the bone. Hey, why did the bone break?
Right.
Do you have weak bones? Did you just, fall over a root or what?
Was there some sort of deficiency there?
Yeah, so it's tracking it backwards. It's just trying to figure out. Now, you can, even if, we can essentially stop the marathon 3 blocks away or a half mile back. Now, we don't know that it may be, 10 miles long. So it's all about tracking it backwards. And any stopping point or any place where you say, okay, everyone has to walk at this point of the marathon, if it gets longer, if you can stop it at a certain point, then any of those things would be good.
Well,
now, it's tracking farther and farther back.
Like this whole plaque aspect, it kind of seems like where you slow things down with this plaque, and it kind of seems like an area to look at. But I suppose what I should take from this is like, we're not as far along as perhaps the person whose family has been directly impacted by this. Like, the most amazing person in our family was taken by Alzheimer's, and so for me, any kind of advance is not enough, right? Yeah. There's really no story that you could come on to SciByte with other than, by the way, science has cured Alzheimer's, that I'm going to be like completely blown away by. But I guess what the takeaway here is that really we're starting to get an insight of really kind of the mystery behind Alzheimer's and how it affects directly the brain's communication. Yeah,
I mean, you're learning, okay, these amyloid beta, are causing an influx of this, and they're, some calciums are triggering specific enzymes, and that appears. You're tracking the dominoes. You're tracking the mile markers of the marathon, however you want to put it. But
of your life,
yeah. And if we start tracking these down, I mean, as a completely it's not a good direct analogy, but look at cancer over the last 20 years.
You're
like, there's some hospitals that, children's hospitals that go, here's the chart. This type of cancer had a 3% survival rate 20 years ago.
Sure.
Now it has 98.
Right.
So it's, things are changing over time, and we still don't know how to necessarily stop it in its tracks or stop it before it happens.
Right. Yep.
But
if you zoom out to the 30 level, to the 30-year level, things actually look quite good.
Yeah. Now, I agree with you. I mean, I think back at, my grandmother, and I wasn't necessarily there with her for the later stages. I was at, college and away here. But, I remember, the stories and my parents taking care of her and seeing pictures and looking through and be like, hey, where's grandma? Oh, wait, that's her, I believe. Huh. So I definitely can get you on sort of that level. I would just say you probably seem like it was a much more real for you.
Yeah.
A day-to-day for you.
I honestly keep waiting for the I wait for the SciByte where Heather comes on here and tells us that by the way, this cybernetic implant, which costs you about $1,000, will cure Alzheimer's. And that's what the chat room. I'm reading the chat room as we go here, and I see people's comments, and they're like, "Well, eventually this is going to be solved by cybernetic implants." And it sounds so crazy far out in the future, but honestly, Heather, if you think about it, what if things could sort of maybe supplement and augment that disease, and maybe you will have a future episode where you say cybernetics are enhancing, or genetic treatments are helping, or something like that. I wait for that day. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Well, it's funny because I sort of blew you off the moment at first when you said cybernetic implants, but then I kind of read the chat thing and really thought about it for a second. It's like epilepsy. You can treat it with medications, but some very virulent or aggressive types, they can actually go in and put an implant into your brain that's essentially like a defibrillator or a pacemaker for your brain that sort of gives a little shock, and it triggers your brain back into normal function. And that seems like, right now to you and I, that seems like a little bit of wishful thinking. Yeah, for me right now, I see it. I see some sort of pill coming before then saying, all right, if we can block this specific enzyme, if we can block this specific protein, then, start clearing it out, then it will slow it down.
Right. Yeah.
And my question is, at first, will it have to be tailored for a specific person? Because there are some drugs where you go through that and they're like, wait, does it work on everyone, or do we have to specifically get your genetic details and tailor it for you?
Right.
And hopefully it would be something that would be able to work on a much wider basis. Now, if they ever did some sort of, got to some sort of human trials, this would be the sort of disease, essentially, that you're not, some of these drugs you're worried about, what are the effects 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line? With Alzheimer's, I don't think there's so much of that long-term worry.
10 years is really the window.
Yeah, so it's like, hey, if we can get to that point, then it would be great. Then we can start worrying about.
Yeah.
So
10 years would be amazing, right? Let's be honest. In this condition, 10 years of cognition and recollection. If you, I don't know if anybody's ever suffered. Family member who suffered from Alzheimer's, but 10 years would be a gift, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my grandmother's was fairly slow-ish. But, yeah, anything that could, stop the race at any point or slow it down, then I would hope that they'd be able to go through and stop the overactivation of any of these enzymes or proteins. And I think that's part of it, is they're like, okay, if we stop this one thing, what happens? Okay, what then? Is something happening before that to cause that?
I don't mean to bring us down too much, but I know one of the things that my grandma would have liked as as a full menu of available options to her to extend her cognition as far as possible. I mean, she would have taken any route possible to stay with her family, to stay her. And even something that offers, I mean, let's be realistic here, something that offers the patient a few more years is invaluable.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in the cases where it's there are cases where it happens very fast, even a few months for some people. I mean, can give you that time so that everyone can see that person still. So it's kind of one of those things where I jump almost at every story. Like, I look at them, and some of them are kind of restating, like, yes, another team has said that this still works, but any, like, new, like, anything, I just jump on it so fast.
Yeah, well, it's something that once you've lived through it, you hope that you can help be part of the solution, because it's one of those things where it seems like we should be able to figure out what causes it. We should be able to fix this. We should be able to solve this problem. And even if you're just a history buff, you look back through history, there's been a lot of really amazing figures in history that have been robbed. And have been taken from us earlier than they should have because of Alzheimer's and things like Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff, Heather. I always appreciate it when you cover and when you're following this for us. So, of course, Heather always has links, more information in the show notes. Anything else you want to talk about, Heather?
No, just kind of checking this out step by step and hoping every step we get.
And, of course, if this impacts you, just check out what Heather's linked in the show notes. She's got videos, she's got links, she's got more information in the show notes. But all right, Heather, let's take a pause right here and remind folks, let's pick things up a bit and remind you that while I'll be at Linux Fest Northwest doing more work than most people do in a 40-hour work week in a single day, I'll be at Linux Fest Northwest. That's right, friends. And while I'm over there, you can help support the Jupiter Broadcasting Network. And you can do that by clicking the Amazon US, Amazon UK. We've got things down there for you like eBay? We got links for eBay. You like Netflix? We got links for that. Netflix, boom. Newegg, boom. You know what? ThinkGeek, boom. Best Buy, boom. Links at the bottom of the Jupiter Broadcasting website. But let me tell you, this is going to happen while I'm at Linux Fest Northwest recording interviews with the most important people in the open source movement. You know what's going to be happening at the same time, and I will not be playing this video game at all. That's right, the new Star Trek movie video game comes out.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to be honest with you, Heather. It's a co-op. It's got a lot of co-op features, and you got that built-in husband factor, the spousal unit.
Do, and we will be playing. We're going to be getting it, and we will be playing co-op and saving the world and all that good stuff.
I'm not going to lie. It's on Steam, and you can pre-order it on Steam. And if you do that, I'm not going to make a dime off of it. However, if you use the link in our show notes to get it for the PlayStation 3, for the Xbox 360, or for a PC download, if you click that link, we will get a percentage of your purchase. Now, here's what it is. It is the new Star Trek movies game. And every movie these days has to have a game. Is it any good? Yeah. I don't know. Here's my plan. I plan to offer Alan a series of complimentary social compliments on the live stream to convince him to play this in co-op. Now, I think I can make a good Kirk, and I think Alan can make a good Spock. Now, live stream, I'm not asking you to influence his decision, but if you were to tag Alan at Alan Jude on Twitter to convince him to play Star Trek co-op with me, you might just be doing a public service. But anyways, we'll have a link to the new Star Trek game in our show notes. And
Chris will give you chat room cookies, and I will be amazed.
And Heather, I mean, let's just say theoretically that you chat with Alan off air on a TeamSpeak and you convince him to play co-op with me. Let's just say theoretically I would be...
The first couple things I could follow. The last part I was not sure.
Well, right. But if basically I was trying to get you to influence him, and I'm happy.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
There you go. So we'll have links to that in the show notes, and if you grab that in the show notes, a percentage of your purchase will support not only the SciByte program, but it's actually how we pay for the bandwidth here on the Jupiter Broadcasting Network. And with that filed, it's time for the News Bite. All right, Heather, what is the first story in the News Bite?
All right, Mars. It is a planet that I like. If you may have
noticed.
guessed. Yes. I was actually looking at the story, and Akito from the game and other places has also pointed out to me. He's like, check this story out.
The game? What game?
Yes. The Star Wars game.
SOTOR. Okay.
SOTOR. See, I was said game because we were just talking about Star Trek, and my brain was about to trip on its face. On its little,
for all I knew, Heather, it was poker. For all I knew, to be honest with you.
Poker, okay.
Yeah. I mean, for all I know, you're a big poker player. How do I know it any different? Other than the fact that I've played hours of video games with you.
Well, you know.
Right.
But one of the things for getting to Mars is the 500 days or 3 month, 90 day, however long you're calculating to get to Mars.
Oh, sure.
So now they're actually there's a new published paper that's saying we could actually use a rocket powered by fusion that would make the trip a 1 to 3 month travel time.
Okay. All right. So theoretical new engine that nobody's actually used in actual production yet. If we use this engine, we could cut theoretical travel time down.
Yes.
Okay.
So a lot of wavy arms, but there actually is some data and some real science.
Sure. Mars in 30 days, Heather. Can it be possible?
That's the question mark. So fusion, that's when the nuclei of two or more atoms combine. Like the sun, converts energy into light, and hydrogen bombs get their destructive power. Oh, by the way, do not freak out because it is very much smaller. It is 1 million. It is 1 in a billion times smaller than a hydrogen bomb.
Okay. I won't freak out.
So I was like, I had it down there. I was like, where are you, silly little concern moment?
Moment of panic.
Yeah,
address.
It's a moment of panic. They're like, okay, calm down. This is through one of those, NASA advanced concepts programs. So, they go out and they say, hey, everybody, do you have an idea? We'll give you 6 months and some money to put all your ideas together and give us some test results. Now, I may have done many of these type of projects.
Sure.
So last month they actually presented their analysis along with some detailed computer modeling and some experimental results, and they've actually tested all the different parts of the process. Not all connected together, but all the various isolated bits have all been tested. So they're kind of going into the slowly combining them together and testing them.
Taking the best of each piece?
No, I mean, I've done this with a test. So there's, it's a big rig, so you want to take, Martian soil and you want to, spit out rocket fuel or in gas. So there's, 4 different steps. Now, first, I'm going to test each of the 4 steps. I'm going to say, yay, each of these work. Now let's see if step 1 and 2 together will still work.
Right, and how feasible are they combined?
Yeah, and then attach the next one and the next one. So it's kind of getting them working all at the same time together. And
I got to imagine part of that is also, I mean, let's be honest. Let's get back to basics here. Part of that's got to be, how much is it going to cost? If we do X, it's going to cost Y, right? I mean, part of that's got to be exploring that question.
Yeah, and so they're looking at that, and for this type of thing, it's the amount of fuel needed to get from here to Mars over, the long duration trips that we have right now.
Oh, yeah, sure.
You have that to kind of balance it out. So you have to carry enough fuel to get you there. Then you have to carry the fuel so that you can carry the fuel.
Can I now, you are very close to this. Are we realistically looking at missions where we send somebody there and they come back? Are we actually talking about that, or are we talking about one-way trips?
NASA talks about back and forth.
Really? Now, when you hear them talk about that, is that BS, or is that like actually they think they can do it?
Well, of course they think they can do it.
No.
No, here is the answer.
Okay.
Is these types of goals are walking finish lines. Let's face it.
Right. Something to build towards.
Yes, and it's kind of got a political twist to it because there are very specific budgets. There
Right.
are, ideas. This
Right.
president says we want to do this, and in 4 years it may be different.
Right. Yeah. One president says we're gonna mine an asteroid and we're gonna go to the asteroid. The other president says let's bring an asteroid in the orbit of the moon.
And then somebody else says no, we want to go to the moon.
Right.
And they all have the possibility of. Putting somebody different in charge of NASA.
Let's be clear. I mean, this seems like one of, unfortunately, you look at all the scientific hurdles that NASA has to solve. At the same time, they also have to. The administration of the United States changes theoretically at best every 8 years, and they have different priorities. And they have, for some of them, going to the moon is a lot more important than the others. So what you're saying is they sort of found a common ground here.
Yeah, well, it also gets back to the part where I am very believing in the private sector. NASA, they have a specific portion of their budget that they have to set aside for what they call small business contracts. So they put out a whole book that says, we have all these different things that we want solved. Everybody look at them. Write in your proposal, we'll pick the best ones and we will fund those. So that it's not just them thinking of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
It's, my company and thousands of others saying, hey, we all have different ideas on how to make this work. And then they pick the best one.
Okay.
And so that sort of lays the groundwork for ideas and technology.
Sure.
So now we have, 6 months and X amount of money to actually work on that technology.
Right.
And we can get it moving, and now somebody else can use that. We can sell it, or we can use it. So that's kind of the place where I'm thinking, like, my belief is where NASA sits right now, is that their sort of research, they have a platform.
Are you saying they're federal R&D?
Kind of. They have, they're the shiny there. Everyone looks at that and says, yes, that's NASA.
This is what we're doing right. This is the beacon of scientific American achievement.
Yeah, that's what some people say.
That's what I think.
And it is a good place. It is a very shiny, happy place where kids in,
Right.
small town Kansas and big town Mississippi or wherever you are can look and say, hey, I want to work there. I want to do. And on the way, you might find that something else works. But in the meantime, you have all this private industry who only has to answer to themselves, who doesn't have any sort of bureaucracy more than they want, that says, hey, if this will work, then yeah, that'll work. But I don't want to spend more money writing up 10 papers on that one little bolt than I have to. I just want the minimum amount needed, and let's move forward.
I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to, is actually being able to establish a reasonable cost to how much something takes. And so,
yeah, well, it's your own money.
Right.
It's the president of the company going, all right, the bank will actually make me pay this back.
Right.
I have to do this. So, and I need to pay my employees' paychecks.
Kind of changes the equation a bit.
Yeah. So I really am leaning more and more towards private industry. So if people like this say, hey, we think this will work, then, we can make these, giant magnetic rings and...
But it's this funny game. It's this funny game where NASA sort of has to, in one sense, they have to be very reasonable and down to earth and actually admit to what they can actually accomplish. Mm-hmm. At the second hand, almost simultaneously, they need to spur innovation in the private sector by shooting a little farther than they can actually reach. That way, the private sector has something to, there's a gap to actually fill.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's true?
Yeah. I'm trying to follow the logic there.
I guess I'm saying that, in the sense that, NASA can come out and say, we want to do X, private companies solve this problem for us. Do you feel like that happens enough? Well,
we've already seen some of that, where we don't have the shuttle. We have no way to get from here to the space station.
Right, great example, isn't it?
Unless we rent a Russian taxi to get there.
Right.
And now hey, wait, now we have a private industry that says, we'll actually sell you trips cheaper than you could do it yourself.
And in this case, it's an American company.
Yep, it's an American company. Yep. It's cheaper than what we pay to the Russians. It's cheaper than what NASA would have to do to create it themselves.
Great point.
So now we have, all right, NASA has this, chunk of money. They pay private industry. Private industry gets it. They work on that. They continue to make innovations. So that's kind of where we're going.
We are. And it's interesting, too, because some of that has leaked into the Linux Action Show, where I've seen sort of the end result of some of NASA's efforts, where they publish, like, we've just completed this research project. Here's the source code. And they drop it as a GPL code dump, and boom, here you go, open source industry. You can do with this as you like. And that's, in a sense, like, it's kind of amazing. It's one sense bad, because as an industry, we have to scramble to make sense of what we've just been given. But at the second hand, like, we've just been given a ton of work, a ton of labor has gone in to determine something, and we've just been given it. So it's one of those things where, like, it's almost the perfect vision, where the government helps spur innovation, but then steps back just the right moment to let private industry sort of take over where they can't quite finish the job. Yeah,
and it's one of those things where this is one of those times where I try not to derail science to the politics, because politics covers up all the science, and then you stop seeing science, and everyone starts arguing politics.
Right, which is silly.
Yeah, but some of it affects. But in the meantime, deep down, in this case, they're triggering very instant, little explosions. And it's not like a rocket that you'd think. It's, they have these big magnetic metal rings that they can use lithium, and they can crush these rings down to power this rocket. And so you have all these very, they use it for nuclear bombs, but it's very, scary, but it's only 1 billion, like I said. So they have where it's, they cause a very minute explosion, and it puffs them forward a little. Yeah. And then they stop. And it's sort of this stop and go. So there's a lot of, you look at it and you say, oh, you have concerns about, the nuclear fusion, and you have the concerns about, yeah, well, does it actually make sense? Yes, as a Mars mission, but can actually use it. But it's one of those times where, really like their test, they have this big idea. They have all the different little pieces, and they have to test the different pieces in order for them to move forward. So they're just, essentially, we're getting lots of little building blocks. This company says, hey, clunk, we think this little rocket engine will work. And you see a whole bunch of other things put out. And so when we can finally start moving things forward, or when a private company or when NASA starts being able to say, okay, we can actually start moving now. We want this piece and that piece and this piece, and put it all together and start making a mission. And then you can start making things work together.
Wow. Yeah, and that's well put, Heather. All right. So before we move on from the news bite, you have another story to cover, don't you?
Yes, I do. More Mars, because Mars is awesome. And I also saw this story about Alan from TechSnap, as we were talking earlier. He actually pointed this out to me as well. Yes.
The Mr. Jude?
The Mr. Jude also pointed this out to me, making sure I did not miss it. So in 1971, back in the day, the Soviet Union launched a Mars 3 mission. It had an orbiter and a lander. Now, 6 months later, it arrives at Mars. Descends down, separates from the orbiter, goes through the atmosphere, has parachutes, retro rockets, if any of this sounds familiar from recent times.
Oh, wow. Have you mentioned nuclear reactors or lasers?
No, they didn't have either one of those.
Okay.
So, but it got it several hours later, lands on the surface, transmits 20 seconds of data, goes silent. Never heard from or seen from again.
Oh.
Until now.
Oh.
Finger in air, eyebrow raised.
Hello. $1 billion.
Yes. So there's the largest Russian internet communities about Curiosity has actually been looking through the data of the high-resolution imaging from the reconnaissance orbiter. it's taking all these high resolution images of Mars, all these different strips. So they said, okay, it's a sort of a crowdsourcing thing going on where we say, by all the calculations, it should have landed in this area. Now somebody said, all right, I'll even go through, and they modeled, what the different pieces of the hardware would look like. So okay, it should be this size, and if it landed this way, then it would look like, the pixels would be arranged in this level. So everyone look in this area, look for things that look like this.
Right.
And actually they were looking at images from November 2007, and they found some likely some actually promising candidates.
When you say they, do you mean people on the internet?
Yes, people on the internet.
Just like people like us.
Yeah, well, Russian people like us.
Right. Only we speak Ruskies.
Yeah, we do not speak Ruski язык, no.
And we Google search Bitcoin mining a lot.
In English.
Right.
Most likely.
Probably.
Probably. So they're actually able to see 4 different features that looks like the parachute, the heat shield, the retro rocket, and actually the lander itself. And so all of them are sort of size and shape that you'd expect them to be in. They're sort of arranged in sort of a line, just like as they would, in an entry, descent, landing sequence. So, and they actually did some follow-up images last month of the same feature. So it's not just some sort of fragment or of the image or the data or anything in the dirt happens to be there, but they actually saw it all again. And of all the features, the what they call the candidate parachute is the most distinctive. It is the most, for lack of a better word, shiny. It's a bright spot.
Right. Of course.
It's about the size that we think it should. And it sees, it shows about 8.5, a little over 8 yards. And they think that the diameter would actually be, 12 yards. So it makes sense if it was, it's not fully extended. But it makes sense that would still be the brightest spot. If you remember last SciByte, we actually talked about the Curiosity rover's parachute and how they were looking at it and how one image to the next, 3 months in, with 3 months in between, the parachute actually looked different. They had, sort of, the wind had blown it around, so it looked like it was a different configuration. So if the wind on Mars is blowing all these parachutes, then it would continually kick off the dust. So it would remain, brighter, shinier. Which also makes sense because we've seen other landers, possibly Viking, I don't recall exactly which, but they've actually seen other parachutes where it's been seen for a very long time. Other specific landers, they sort of disappear under the Martian dust eventually. They get, buried and you can't see them anymore. But the parachutes we've been able to see. And we've been like, well, you can see those for a long time. And that is, we've seen direct evidence now that is probably because, the Martian wind is blowing the sound around, but it's also blowing the parachutes around, which continually is knocking the dust off of them.
Right.
So now they of course they can't say for sure that this is what they are. There are some explanations that's like, okay, yeah, it could be that, and we haven't knocked all of them out of the way. But it looks very significantly like they have found this poor little lost Russian Mars lander, which is actually the first one to actually land on Mars and transmit anything, even though it only lasted 20 seconds. It got there first.
Did I skip right over our pick this week?
I didn't think so.
Okay, all right, good. I wanted to make sure I didn't.
No, we talked about the game.
Okay.
Because you were trying to convince Alan to play.
Oh, right. Okay. So there you go. Well, and Heather has links to more of that in the show notes, including pictures which look surprisingly pristine. You can check that out. But with that filed, Heather, any other thoughts on that?
I don't think so.
All right, then you know what that means. It's time for the 2Byte News. Boys, stand over there. All right, get ready. On the SciByte. Oh, wait. All right, Heather, what do we have on the 2Byte News?
All right. Today is full of Mars. And it's not just because I have, a natural inkling towards Mars.
No, of course not. I would never assume that.
Well, no, I do, but these stories just happen to be at the same time also. So there was a comet that people may have heard of that they said, oh no, it's going to hit Mars next year.
Oh, I hadn't heard that. Okay, all right. So should I be freaking out right now? Okay, I'm ready to freak out if you want me to. I can freak out.
Nope.
Oh.
Even less likely. So they'd looked and they'd say some very, a small amount of data that said the orbit looked like it could hit Mars. That it would smash into it. And now they've been able to get more data. And in fact, they're able to go back and say, hey, look at the old ones. Is the comet in these older images in different locations, so you can sort of data in the data, track it backwards, and get a much more precise orbital information, so you can track it forward. And now the probability that it's actually going to hit Mars, it was 1 in 8,000. Now it's like 1 in 120,000 chances that it will actually hit. So it'll get its closest approach on October 19th of next year, 2014. But, of course, they'll continue to sort of refine everything about where it is and the exact orbital details. But
so I shouldn't worry yet.
No, Martians are even safer.
Oh. I don't know, Heather. I feel like you need to deliver more drama. Can you at least bring me into the Situation Room and explain to me how it could be very close to like an environmental impact or something?
Oh, no.
Oh,
all right.
Here
is where it stands. There will be a comet in the sky.
There, I like that.
It may hit us, or it may just look really awesome from the surface of Mars.
Get your camera ready.
Okay.
All right, so we got the little story about glasses, don't we?
We do. These are glasses that can actually read to you.
I'm ready.
Now, this is not just for the extremely lazy. This is for, like, the blind. So you can... It's a project challenge, issued by a professor. These are some college students. So faculty member Seema Pisaris, founder of Games Trader. She said, all right, she's a professor and says, okay, class, I want you to think of a social entrepreneurship project. So
sure.
Think of something that would work and that you could actually go through. And so they actually, said, hey, it's a real breakthrough product. So now what they've been able to do is they've been able to design this portable, they say affordable, and operate without an actual internet connection. So it's just a pair of glasses with a high-res camera, and think not like glasses like everybody wears, more like thick rim sunglass types.
Okay.
They have a little camera built into one of the sides, and it takes a picture, and then it can go into a program that says, all right, we're going to pull out the actual letters. So now they can walk around a store or a library, hold, like a book or the cereal box in front of them. The camera will take a picture of it, translate that into words, and then when in the an earpiece will be in the glasses, and that sort of reads to them.
Oh, nice.
So it's like, this cereal's chocked full of honey, oats, and goodness. But it really offers a lot of freedom. They're working with closely with various groups. So they call it the iTalk. So they're looking to get it into as many different languages as they can. They're going through all these different competitions to sort of get the word out, as to say. So it sort of will allow everyone to go through, the blind user to be able to access all this printed material without having to, carry a more bulkier or expensive equipment.
That is very nice.
So
nice
give them a lot
for them.
Yes, give them a lot more freedom.
Mm-hmm. All right, Heather, we'll stand clear because I must press this button. The SciByte 2000 tells me we have... Oh, boy, oh my goodness. As a matter of fact, we have a little incoming feedback, don't we, Heather?
We do. All right, now it's not just me who's doing all this Mars stuff. Jacob Roker from Twitter asks, if we landed someone on Mars, would they go to the same spot as the rovers, or would they pick something new, someplace new?
You gotta go somewhere new, right?
It's a combination of things. Now,
okay,
we will obviously use the orbiter to look out and sort of eye different locations. We'll say, all right, where's the best locations to land? You have specific soil composition. We want amount of water in the soil to sort of, we can get that up out of the soil. You want specific terrain, so it will be safe enough to land, but possibly interesting enough that maybe close enough to something interesting that a rover couldn't go onto very easily.
Worth our time, but just enough difficult that the rover couldn't robotically go to it.
Yeah, well, of course, it's going to be a lot faster. I mean, with the Curiosity or any of the rovers, the scientists look and they say, "There's a rock over there. All right, we will go to the rock." And then like 3 days later, they're at the rock. Then they can, laser the rock, versus, me, if I was on Mars, I'd be like, "Cool, rock, step, step, step."
Right.
Let's check this rock out.
6 hours, all the science you need is done.
Yeah, so there's definitely, that's going on. Then you can say, human looks at it, human decides, right there on the spot what's going on.
Right.
So most likely would be someplace different, someplace, very interesting, possibly close enough so that it'd be a chance that you could go out and look at one of the old rovers. Now, if the rover, say Curiosity as of right now, finds something mind-blowingly awesome, if they actually say, "Hey guys, we see old Martian sludge. We see its, fossilized sludge," then of course, you know what? Humans might go there. Because if there's something that mind-breakingly awesome, then you want to be able to double-check exactly what's going on. You want to be able to have hands-on, eyes-on, data checking here. So most likely the answer would be when and if exactly future SciByte hosts, maybe even us, possibly show hosts 7 and 8, actually see us landing on Mars. Then
SciByte 145. Let's say I don't want to go beyond for that.
I wish more like 322, maybe. But so you're going through and you see that and you're like, okay, so most likely someplace new, someplace just interesting enough but safe enough, and using all the data that we have from everything we've had so far to give us the best chance to make scientists argue for as long as they possibly can about where we should land. Because they will all argue about where we should land. And everyone will have different ideas and different things that they want to test. But then once, so all those things are going through. Now it will be a much shorter discussion if, Curiosity finds something really awesome, then everyone will go, "Yeah, we don't want to be the one to speak up and say, 'No, I don't want to go check that out.' We would be ostracized. No other scientists will want to eat lunch with us."
Right. and it could be Alfredo. Nobody wants to pass on Alfredo.
No.
Yeah. All right, Heather, while we're up in the clouds, why don't we blast over to Mars and let's just finish it off.
And liftoff of the Atlas V with Curiosity.
That's right.
Touchdown confirmed. We're safe on Mars.
Real. All right, Heather. Now I know there can't be much to talk about. We're in this period of time where communications is intermittent. There must be nothing to update us on.
Yeah, pretty much. Now we're in conjunction, which means every 26 months or so, which means that the sun is sitting practically right between us and Mars, and so any communication might get a little spotty. Now we've given Curiosity and the orbiter, and even a little Opportunity, he keeps chugging along. We've given them a whole little honey-do lists of where they have chores that they're supposed to do, and they will continue to report back to us.
I like the honey-do analogy. That's good.
Yes. Now, once the conjunction is over, they'll dump all that data back to us again to make sure that it actually, is right and all the data is there. Now, we're not going to tell them to do anything because radio transmissions aren't good. And if it only gets part of a transmission saying, start, laser, stop, wheels, you don't want some cross-contamination of it saying, "Hey, I should keep driving. Chug, 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 chug. Ah!"
Right. Goes off a cliff.
Yeah, well, there's no real cliffs, but you get the analogy.
Right.
That's what my little ad was about, too.
I liked it.
So So we've got that, and we've had these Curiosity Rover reports where they have, one member of the team stand up. Of course, one of the famous ones was the first one where it was Mohawk guy going on, and they kind of tell exactly like what's going on in the past week or what's been going on in the past month or so. So they've kind of released one kind of going over what, some of the things that have been released over the past month or so. We've talked about, a great deal of them, but if you're interested in actually kind of visualizing a lot better the whole conjunction process, and
right.
You can't picture my arms waving around in the air very well explaining this, then there's a great YouTube video there. There's also, like I said, the Curiosity Rover report there in the show notes.
And the return of Mohawk guy is what you're really telling me.
No, Mohawk guy's not there.
Oh.
But it's those reports. We haven't had one of those Rover reports in a little while.
Okay.
But they are back. At least this one, I think they wanted to put one out so that nobody forgot about them too much.
Right. It really is something, isn't it? The way they've been doing the weekly YouTube videos and all of the social media stuff, the Twitter accounts. I mean, it's like NASA 2.0 in a way, right?
Yeah, their weekly videos haven't been quite scheduled. I'd have to say that certain science shows that might give you bite-sized news are much more regular.
Right.
Regularly produced.
Other science shows that give you bite news weekly on Tuesdays and fresh Wednesdays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They may be more consistent, but when they do post things, it's nice. They kind of re-go over everything, and you actually see the images and the pictures of what they're talking about. So
yeah, absolutely. All right, Heather. Well, speaking of things that are consistent, why don't you just hop in the time machine, which so far, for 90 episodes in a row, has been quite consistent. Here we go.
Yeah.
Wow. If you had to ask me, I'd say this one felt like 92 years, but it actually turns out to be 93 years. April 17th, 1930, 93 years ago. What happened this week in science, Heather?
The discovery of this new rubber-like compound was discovered in a laboratory notebook. Neoprene. Yes, he noticed that he's going through his lab, and he noticed Dr. Arnold Collins. He noticed, hey, a mixture that I had done like weeks before has now solidified. So, I do all these tests, and, I'm in the lab, and I have everything in little bottles, and I have them up on my shelf. And then every once in a while I go, and I'm like, yes, I need the data from, 3 weeks ago. And I look, and I'm like, it looks different now. Now, this gentleman, he goes, it's solidified into a somewhat rubber-like mass. So it's the polymerization of monovinyl acetylene.
Ooh.
I almost got all through it without tripping.
Well.
So it's close.
Yeah.
So he was doing this research, and over the next couple of weeks, very gradually he recognized that, hey, this had potential for great synthetic rubber. Now, they initially called it chloroprene. And now, since 1936, known as neoprene. Now, as far as, they said, hey, it would be useful for products impervious to oil or electrical wires for coating. And now we can see it in a variety of things: a laptop sleeve, orthopedic braces, electrical insulation, liquid and sheet membranes on flashlights, on automotive fan belts, in scuba diving suits. So all these different things, all because somebody was checking out their old notes and said, this mixture that I made 3 weeks ago now looks different.
And really, in the grand scheme of things, 93 years ago, not that long. For
long ago and not that long.
Yeah, exactly. Just the right amount of long ago. All right, Heather. Well, let me retune the SciByte 2000 while we look up into the sky this week.
Go. On Thursday, April the 18th, the moon is reaching its first quarter phase. And also this week, so they call the sickle of Leo. The Leo is the constellation, the lion. So you can see the head of it. It's sort of like a backwards question mark, with the brightest star being at the base of that question mark. It doesn't have a dot. It's just the backwards question mark.
An upside down question mark. Right? I mean, I look at that.
Backwards.
Okay. All right. Science.
Science. It's. I think it's just flipped left to right now. Of course, the sky turns around, so it'll happen to shift like that. But on Friday, it will be to the upper left of the moon. And on Saturday, it's just above the moon. And on Sunday, it's to the upper right of the moon. So you'll actually be able to see this, backwards question mark in the sky if you're able to get into a dark location on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So you'll know, hey, that is the constellation Leo, and the brightest star at the bottom is called Regulus. Now, Jupiter this week, which is, a fairly good planet, we shall agree here on Jupiter Broadcasting.
Not bad.
Yeah. So after sunset this week, it's going to be rising in the west. It's going to be in the west, should I say, and it'll sort of moving down towards the horizon until 11 or 12 when it actually will set. And of course, the red giant star Aldebaran will also sit below Jupiter because they've been hanging out a lot lately.
Right, but it's important to note that the giant star sits below Jupiter.
Yes. Yeah, and it's not Mars, it is just the giant star.
Right. It might look a little red, is what you're saying?
Yeah, it looks orange-red, but
it's actually a giant star that is being what you might consider subservient to Jupiter. Right.
We'll go with that.
Okay.
Sad head shake, yes.
Thank you.
And Saturn, not to be left out, at the end of twilight this week, it's going to be low in the east to southeast. It'll be rising through the sky about all evening. It'll be highest in the sky around 1 to 2 a.m. daylight savings time. So we've got the sickle of Leo, the backwards question mark, hanging around the moon on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But Jupiter off in the west after sunset. And we've got Saturn just after twilight in the east to southeast. So lots of different things this week.
Very nice, Heather. All right. Well, I believe that brings us to the end of this week's episode. All right. There you have it, everyone. Well, don't forget, SciByte is live on Tuesdays over at jblive.tv. And don't forget, you can email us, SciByte@jupiterbroadcasting.com, or hit that contact link, or tweet Heather over at jb_Mars_base. Heather, thank you for the great show.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in this week's episode of SciByte. We'll see you right back here next week.